We are currently looking at a Euro US dollar 60-minute chart, and we're going to talk a little bit about trading using pivot points as a reference when the market is trending. Now, what we see on this chart here is the red line, or the pink line, we'll call it a red line. The red line here marks the central pivot for the day as calculated based on the previous day's range, and the faded gray lines represent resistance 1 and resistance 2 above, and support 1 and support 2 below, of course. Now, when you're trading, when the market is trending, let's have a look at this particular chart. We've compressed the chart to just to simply show you that the market is trending, and the pivot points seem to be, for the most part, higher on each subsequent day. Now, that's not always going to happen, of course, in an uptrend, because you will have upswings and swings in an overall uptrend. But let's have a look a little bit more closely. These vertical dotted lines represent the beginning of each day at 0000 hours GMT, and then we have a 24-hour period before the next 24-hour period starts. So keep your eye on these vertical lines and each pivot, support, and resistance levels for each day. As we discussed in the theory session, we want to be buying in the buy zone, which is either at or below the central pivot, is the buy zone. So as the market is trending up, we would like to see price retrace to at least the pivot point or lower. The deeper it retraces, the better. And we want to make our entry deep into the retracement or deep into the buy zone if possible, with the anticipation that the next leg will move up. So here we see price is making higher highs and higher lows. We open in the sell zone, but price retraces into the buy zone. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a trade here. We're going to cover that later in another section. But ideally we want to buy in the buy zone, but as price enters into the new day, what we want to look for is, as the pivot points appear on our charts, we want to look for this central pivot, M2, support 1, M1, or support 2. We would like to see these levels converging with other important technical factors such as pivot points, support resistance, trend lines, or watch for very distinct candlesticks formations to come to fruition at these levels. Once again, let's have a close-up look at this chart, and this is our first connecting point of our long-term uptrend line in this scenario. We'll just move back and we'll watch price. Here we see the market was waiting on an economic report. We rallied to just above R2. Price consolidated, and unfortunately in this case price did not retrace to the central pivot, which in this case the central pivot is also, I'll just give you a quick preview of Fibonacci here. The central pivot is also the 38% retracement, which is quite a frequent occurrence on a key reversal day, or a key a day where the market moves generously, and we're going to cover that in a later section as well. So price moves into the sell zone, does not retrace to the central pivot, and again takes another leg up. Price continues to trend, and what we'll do is we'll just start following the market from this point forward. We are now in the buy zone, but what I like about this buy zone is you see how we are in the buy zone. We are also at this previous level of resistance, and we are also at exactly M2 as price moves up through the central pivot to R1 and coming up to a key level of resistance. We consolidate in the sell zone. You will notice how one thing I want to point out on these charts is you see the narrow pivot levels and the narrow in width or narrow in breadth pivot levels versus the narrow in width pivot levels. This is a Sunday taken from Friday's limited data, and this is a Monday, and we only have limited data on the Sunday, so that's why the pivots are so narrow. So the Monday is typically a low probability trading day in any event, and we will not really pay too much attention to these pivot levels. We see price again consolidate into the buy zone, consolidate into the sell zone here as we move forward, and this is the new pivot level for the day. So now we're in this consolidation or this pennant formation, and again we see price rallying into the sell zone. We see price contending with the previous day's high. We see a hammer, and price responds by falling. It is, for the most part, we're in this consolidation, and what we're going to do is in the next section we're going to look at trading pivots and consolidation. We just want to move forward through this consolidation as the market is waiting on an economic report. We will just simply stretch this level of support and resistance forward. Now price comes down to into the buy zone. We are here at M1, and M1 happens to correspond with this trend line, and we have a level of resistance and support here, and we also have, you see this trend line here, it's a longer term trend line. This is the area in which you want to make your trade. These key levels of support established by the M1 long-term trend line, short-term pennant line. As we see price now rally, and resistance here becomes support to the market for our next leg up. We move into the new day in a sell zone, but we're watching price retrace now to this level of support. It's a level of support, and it's pretty close to the pivot, but not quite there. It goes as low as 73. The central pivot is 62. It comes 10 pips away, and then begins its next leg up. Now we want to watch this level of resistance as it establishes support to the market, and we move into the weekend. As Sunday opens up, it begins a new up leg. We'll just move through the Monday. Now we are into the Tuesday trading. We are watching these key levels of support here. We have a key level of support here at roughly 26.60. market comes down, we are also at, if you see the little gray line here, the narrow gray line, we are at support 1. We're at a key level of resistance, which becomes support, and we are also at this long-term trend line. We are at the long-term trend line, support and resistance, and we are in a buy zone with our pivots. Price now responding, and what you want to do is when you buy at this level, really nice hammer. So we have a combination of support, resistance, uptrend line, buy zone in the pivots, and a really nice hammer. And look how price responded here. The length of this candle is 35 pips. It is a 35 pip candle, so surely there's enough room in there for some profit. You want to take profit before it gets to this key level of resistance here. Take some out, leave a little bit in just in case it keeps going. Now this is we move from S1 through to M4, and this level of resistance where I would expect to see some a bounce here, because price has moved from 2660 to 27 to a high of 2780. So it moved 120 pips from the base of support to the high, and look how much it bounced off of this high. We're going to study that further, and there will be many trading opportunities, and a great opportunity to get into some big moves on these types of market situations. We are now forming just a consolidation at the end of the day. There's a lot of flows that have contributed to this move, and so price will now consolidate. Looks like price wants to make another go at the highs here. We move up to 2800, the figure. In the sell zone, and if price continues to struggle up at 2800 and breaks through this level right here, you see this 27, no, I'd say about 2775 area. If price breaks through 2775, look at how weak price is getting here. Look at the efforts. It's trying to trade above this level here, the 2775 level, but it is showing considerable weakness, and if it continues to show weakness, then there is an opportunity to sell if it breaks through 2775. Here we have an economic report. This is why you don't want to stand in front of it, because look at the whiplash. 2750 to 2830, an 80 pip whiplash. Now we start to break through and hold below 2775, and you see here how price slowed down. It got slower and weaker and weaker. Now we are looking for our correction. We are in the sell zone up here, and looking at this weakness, but you have to be careful, and you want to wait and trade after this type of economic report. Price comes down and bounces at the trend line again, but I'm not convinced it will hold. The other thing is that if you see a significant level like this and the market bounces there, and if it does not hold, then that can set up a nice move to the downside. Looks like it wants to move down. It came up and tested this level of support, and now we move to the downside. Now what I like here is we are deep into the buy zone of the pivot level. Here's our central pivot. Here's S1, S2, and we are deep into the buy zone here, and you can trade it somewhere between here and this low. If it comes all the way down to that low and the 10-day moving average, you are beyond the support range, and that would be a great opportunity to buy. Otherwise, you can potentially buy up here. So we've got 26.94 and the low here is 26.63. So there's between the low 84, there's about 20 pips difference between the low and this key level here. This key level can be loosely established, but again, the idea is that we are deep in an uptrend. We are deep into the buy zone, beyond our second level of support, which can offer a nice opportunity to buy. You could, when it's back here, you could wait for price to come down and test this low here if you want a really, really ideal trading opportunity, but the market may not always give it to you. So now we move from deep into the buy zone, and look how price bounces at the previous day's high. Nice bounce, and then continues upward. Holding above previous resistance, is holding above, now making a go at the previous day's high. You see how it bounces at the previous day's high? This, you see this candlestick right here, this is Asian session. Asia will often make attempts at the previous day's high, but will less than 50% of the time will it get through. And now we continue to move up. We are deep in the sell zone now, and what you'd want to look for up here, which we'll cover in the next section, is a key level of resistance as you're deep in the sell zone. Coming back, testing previous resistance, which is now support, but look how much room you've got to work with. It tests the level, moves 20-30 pips, comes back 20-30 pips,